We did a trip a while back. 7 brokers were involved in the trip. I mean, how is 7 brokers involved in one trip? Airplane brakes. I know a buddy. You know a buddy. We all know a buddy with a cell phone and knows a guy with a plane. And next thing you know, we're a glorified broker. So, and then we call them bathroom brokers. And there's nothing wrong with broker. I think they play a pivotal role in this ecosystem. But there's ones that don't.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Crosscheck, the squawk sheet that uncovers the stories, challenges, and careers shaping business aviation. I'm your host, Rob Hoffman, along with Ian Lumpp, and we're so glad you're joining us here today. If you're passionate about BizAv, mentorship, and want to stay ahead, then make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Don't forget, you can also catch us on your favorite streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube for a more visual experience. Today's guest is Jack Lambert, CEO of Flyhouse, a company that's redefining what luxury and service look like in the crowded world of jet brokerages. Jack brings more than 20 years of management and aviation experience to the table, including founding Jet Access Aviation, where he cut his teeth as an entrepreneur and business leader. Now at Flyhouse, Jack has landed headline-grabbing partnerships with College Game Day and L.I.V Golf's 4 Aces, showcasing private aviation on one of the biggest stages in sports and entertainment. This is a conversation about building something different, winning trust at the highest levels, and giving back to the next generation of aviation leaders. Jack, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Appreciate it, boys.
Welcome. All right, Jack, why don't we just dial things back right now, and let's talk about your early career. How did you find your way into aviation?
Well, couldn't hit a baseball for power. That was the first thing. No, so, listen, I didn't know anything about private aviation other than, obviously growing up in Atlanta, the only thing I knew was Delta. But because I played sports, I met some interesting folks in the business and, gave me an opportunity. That opportunity was at a company called eBiz Jets, which is now Sentient, as you guys know. And so spent a couple years there just grinding, learned the business, and then took the knowledge that I learned there and transformed that into the operator side and built up some operators over the next 3 years. And then in 2005, started a company called Jet Access Aviation, and then grew that it was a brokerage, grew that for about 3 or 4 years, and then bought a 135 company out of the Northeast that was formerly TAG Aviation. Bought that and then built that up to 49 airplanes and sold it in early 2020.
Wonderful. I always love the analogy of sports leadership and how that can be part of anyone's success story. Talk to us a little more about your sports career that preceded your entry into business aviation.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I went to UMass to play basketball. I got hurt 2 days before my first game. Was in the training room. Center fielder got hurt. I said, well, I played baseball in high school and travel ball. Coach said, great. Well, let's go see if you can catch some balls. So he said, hey, if you miss a ball, we're going to go hit right now in the, and this was in Boston. So snowing in the parking lot. He hit me 20 balls. I'm diving in the parking lot catching balls, but he never saw me hit. But he said, hey, you're on the team. And so I had an amazing year. And then in the summer, the quarterback tore his ACL. I'm like, well, I ran the option in high school. So I called my basketball coach and said, hey, coach, I want to play. And they actually made me the captain of the basketball team without playing. He said, hey, but you got to make every practice. And so he changed the schedule around so that I can make every practice, end up becoming the starting quarterback on the football team. And there you go. And 10 years later, I was in the Hall of Fame for all 3 sports.
So that's absolutely incredible. Now, you did parlay that into something bigger, this affiliation with sports, and we're going to get into that in a moment. But why don't we kind of get into Flyhouse right now? Talk to us about its genesis and talk to us about how it started, why it started, and where it is today.
Yeah, great. So, obviously coming from the Sentient world, eBiz Jets brokerage, I had the opportunity to kind of learn the back end of the business from the, finding airplanes, literally before technology, literally calling FBOs, seeing if airplanes were leaving empty, calling towers to see if those airplanes are flying across country empty. So learning that side of the business and then taking that to the operator side was game changer because I wasn't a sales guy, but I was selling operators on, I had asses for their seats. And so being able to kind of learn that side of the business first, and then obviously transform that into actually finding the asses for those seats, and then actually having the seats, managing the seats yourselves. But then also knowing and having the relationships with other people that had seats made it more and then made it better. And then this opportunity came along where, the gentleman that started it basically was an owner, aircraft owner, and he had seen how the management styles have changed over the years just by owning an aircraft. And then that took a bigger picture into the world of, hey, how do we connect, basically asses and seats to all the other operators in the country, and how do we build this ecosystem? And you can't do that with 5 or 10 airplanes. You can do it with hundreds, if not thousands of airplanes. But you got to have relationships with those operators to be able to move those airplanes. And so, being able to, create a model that's safety, service, transparent, that really hasn't existed. You always see the system of, hey, we're only going to be one sided. We're just going to be safe. Well, that's great, but then you got to provide a level of service. I give the example: if you go to Chick-fil-A and you have 10 people tell you it's a great day, thank you for coming, you just spent $12. Why is it different if you spend 40,000? The
Yeah.
level of service is different. It's not transparent, right? So there's a lot of hands in the pot. So if we can connect the end user to the owner or operator, basically eliminating a lot of the fluff that exists today, and we call that friction. So how do we create a frictionless model, and create one where everybody wins? Today, or as you've seen in the history of charter, typically only one person wins. That's the person that actually is facilitating that flight, not the person flying in the back, and not the person that actually has the airplane. So creating a frictionless model, but being able to do it at scale, is something that has, got our attention, and that's what we're building.
So is that the secret? Is it scale? I mean, we all know, we've heard this time and time again, that the customer experience is lacking. Everyone knows, all right, you've got all these planes deadheading. It'd be great if we could just fill the seats on the return flight, right? But so few have managed to crack this code. So what is it, if we get down to the minutia of what makes you different, or how you figure out how to really achieve this goal?
Well, listen, I think the first thing you have to start is behavior change, right? We always say, if we've always done this one way, it must be the only way to do it. And we have to change that mindset. That's our biggest hurdle, is just changing that mindset. Setting
You're
the
talking about
table.
with the operators themselves, or with the
Well,
customers, or with the
I think
brokerages, or
everybody in the
all the above?
I think all the above. I think everybody in the ecosystem has to change the mindset and understand that, hey, it is not about just one piece of that pie. It's about the entire pie. And I think if we all are operating under the same, what we call it, sheet of music, right? If we all operate out of the same house, playing off the Flyhouse name, if we operate under the same house and operate under the same standards, there's 15 different standards that people operate under. If I fly on your airplane and I fly on Ian's airplane, it's two different experiences.
Yes.
The way the pilot treats me, the way the interior of the air, I mean, everything about that experience is completely different, and it shouldn't be. You're paying $40,000 for a flight. You go to Chick-fil-A in Atlanta, you go to Chick-fil-A in L.A. It's the same. It tastes the same. So
Yeah.
why is it different when you're flying on a private jet? You're flying on a Hawker 800 XP. There's thousands of them out there. Why is each airplane different? The experience is different. You go to you go to an FBO. That experience is different from FBO. There's 5 of them on the field, and you go to each one and have a different experience. I think so to that point, there's a lot of education around kind of the whole entire process. And then the other side of it is creating a culture, obviously internally at Flyhouse, getting the right people in the house to be able to kind of spread that gospel around the aviation community that understands, hey, we're not here to create competition. We're here to embrace it and then create a better ecosystem where all parties win. When you look at the fuel and, there's 15, 16 different, fuel companies out there all vying for your business, but there's no singular source for that. Right. And so being able to create that and do that at scale, I always like the CAA example, right? Where, if you're a Part 91 owner, you now get to participate in that side. Well, why is it that I'm 135 and I can't? There is no program for you. I give the example: 90% of the operators have less than 10 airplanes. You know, and Susie has 3 jobs. She's the
Yeah.
accountant, she's the dispatcher, she does the charter. Hell, she might do 4 or 5. She's got 3 kids under 5. She's leaving the office at 2 and in the car line, and she's trying to manage all these processes, and it's very difficult. And so, then you talk about safe. Well, you need a safety officer. Well, let's take the chief pilot, for example, or a pilot on the line. Let's give him $15,000-$20,000 and let's call him a safety officer. That's great. Now pay $15,000, and by the way, we're platinum. We're safe, boys. That's not the way it's supposed to be. That's the way we've operated. And it's worked till it hasn't worked, right? So how do you create a better ecosystem in that framework? And then, how do you become transparent? It's we always use the example. I mean, we did a trip a while back. 7 brokers were involved in the trip. I mean, how is 7 brokers involved in one trip? Airplane brakes. I know a buddy. You know a buddy. We all know a buddy with a cell phone and knows a guy with a plane. And next thing you know, we're a glorified broker. So, and then we call them bathroom brokers. And there's nothing wrong with broker. I think they play a pivotal role in this ecosystem. But there's ones that don't, and it's not transparent. And so, I think at the end of the day, guys, I think, does it matter who flies in the back of your airplane? It doesn't matter that Ian flies in mine or yours. What matters is that Ian's going to pay his bill. That's what matters. And so we're all fighting for the same ass in the seat. And it's like, there's so many out there that if we all work together, we can all make more, become more efficient, and then create systems, technology, which is what Flyhouse is doing, to be able to do that. And somebody asked me the other day, it says, well, why do you want to help everybody? Well, if I help everybody, that helps me. That helps me and my owners. And so that if I can help you become more efficient, that's going to allow you to focus on what you're not doing today, which is service. And that's going to allow you, you're in Minnesota. It is impossible for you to focus on your Minnesota clients if you're out running around town, flying airplanes, managing, just trying to make ends meet. It's impossible for you to focus on your people at home. By the way, it's impossible for you to focus on your employees. So if you can focus on your employees first, get that wound up, then you can go focus on your local. So Flyhouse obviously takes this to a broader scale, but allows you as an aviation owner to focus on what you do best, and then allow Flyhouse to help facilitate the rest.
So, do you look at these owners as partners? How does the
Absolutely.
relationship really work?
Absolutely. And by the way, not only are you partners, we actually give our partners ownership in Flyhouse. Why? Because I want them invested. We're going to invest in you. Obviously, on the safety side, we're going to actually give you a safety officer. We want you to be safe. We want to create this better ecosystem. So we're willing to invest in you. In turn, you just have to let us know if your airplane is available or not. If your airplane flies so many hours on our platform, we give you ownership. That changes the way you operate, and that changes the partnership. Now we're together. Create these advisory boards. Why? Because we want people that want to be here.
Yeah.
If you have people, and we all seen it, people that don't want to operate under the standard, no big deal. We're just not for you. So, creating that, but it starts at the ground level, but way before you get into the air. And
So
honestly, it's not even about Flyhouse is not even about aviation. It's about creating experiences and the service side that just doesn't exist and hasn't
this
for a long time.
this
Yeah.
this almost seems like a private equity model, what you're offering to your operators, but on a different kind of level because you understand aviation, you've lived it. You're not some analyst that just figured it out, a couple of months ago. But that typically is the private equity model. We're going to find a small business. We're going to entice you to come in, whether it's a buyout or some sort of equity movement here, where you're a part of the larger company, but that's kind of what you're doing, but your playbook is different at the same time, right?
Well, yeah, well, you're exactly right. The playbook is different, and most private equity obviously doesn't understand the business because they haven't done it, right? And so we've seen that in tech, right? Tech people do tech really really well, but they don't understand that business, but they can build it if you teach them. So a part of this is the education process to be able to educate them. But yeah, to your point, just a different playbook.
Yeah, but the scale is what you do have in common here. And you're saying, hey, I can offer you a couple of things here that can enhance what you're offering right now. You're part of the bigger umbrella. Yeah, you get some ownership in here as well, and we all win together, right?
100%. We all win together. That's the motto.
Yeah, let me take us back just a touch because you had mentioned culture and building your team and making sure you have the right people. And I know we've talked a lot about laying the right groundwork, and I think your team and your culture sets you up for success regardless. And if there's one thing that I've consistently heard about what you've done at Flyhouse is that you have the right people in the right places, and it seems like that has been what you've built upon this, huge house now, quite literally. What is your what is your culture like in general for those that, are kind of listening, watching, and what kind of people do you generally find to thrive at Flyhouse?
Well, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, we started off talking sports. And so everything comes for me, everything comes back to that team mentality, being able to grind, have that grit, determination, never give up. We're going to win this. And so I think, as I go into meetings and go into interviews, I think the interview process for me is very, very easy. You ask a couple questions. What do you like to do outside of the house, right? What is, I want people that, we spend more and more time with our people than we do our own families. So I need to understand that it's not about the aviation part. It has nothing to do with it. It has, can you operate under stress? Because we live in a stressful world. And what are you going to do when that happens? And what do you like to do on your downtime? And so, fitting those pieces of the puzzle, it just comes back to sports. Um, so that's the playbook. That's the groundwork. The conversations and interviews are very, very simple. I can't teach you the 90%. I can teach you the 10%. I can't teach you how to introduce yourself, how to talk to somebody, even on the sales process. It's like if you just got good quality people, we can teach you aviation. And so you start. I think that's where a lot of companies fail is um, they hire for timing and just for bodies. And it's like, I'm looking for something where I want you here for a while. I'm not going to invest my time and effort for somebody who's just here for a job. I want you here for a career. And I think that message comes across very clear in the interview process that this is, we're not screwing around here. We're building something. This is the time. And you missed the mark. I always say, hey, the train's left the station. If you jump off now, or you better jump off now if you don't want to ride this. Because it's, we live in a fast paced world, which constantly changing. We've changed a lot just in the 3 years I've been here. Um, but comes back to, do when you set this thing up, it becomes very clear that you've got to have the right people. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I've done a lot of hard things in my life. Playing three sports in college, basically had no life. This right here, it's hard. But knowing that we're part of something that's groundbreaking, people use the word disruptor. That's a little different, but I think when you're doing something different, being part of something that's, we always say it's never been done before. And, I think it's been done in certain aspects. I think when you take out some verticals, people have done, part of it, but to really build this, and we use the ecosystem, that word, we throw that around a lot, but that's really what it is. Cause it's all encompassing aviation. We bought a bank, we got a Flyhouse Foundation. We have Flyhouse maintenance. Now we got the 145 with the Sunner acquisition, which, by the way, we're closing today.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So, being able to have those verticals and then setting those up, but then have the right people running them. I think some companies have failed because they've got the people with the name, but not the determination to be able to get to that next level. And that's hard. Finding the right people, it's the hardest thing. And we always say there's talent out there, but there's a reason why they're out there. On one end, right? And so it's you're finding that needle in a haystack. And listen, we've had to go through people, good and bad, but that's just part of the process. That's the journey. It's no different than a coach having his team on the field. This player just doesn't work, and it's all good. You always say, Ian, hey, you're just really good on defense. You can't catch a ball. I'm going to make sure that you're on defense. You like tackling, so great. I'm going to put you on defense. Somebody else might be really, really good at catching balls. Guess what? You're going to be on offense. And so figuring out kind of that playbook, you've got to constantly change it because it's, I got to put somebody else in today. It's all good.
Speaking of sports analogies right now, you've had a few big wins recently in the sports world, College Game Day and L.I.V golf. Talk to us more about how those partnerships came together, and talk to us more about the whole program there and what you're doing with them.
Well, listen, I think it's, it comes down to, and we talk about a lot, especially with this AI stuff, but it comes down to relationships. You have relationships with people, and if you can deliver on your word and be able to say, hey, we're gonna say yes, we're gonna make shit happen. Those came through just through relationships that we've had over the years. The opportunity presented itself where we could, do the game day. The L.I.V thing was kind of unique because it's, with the PGA Tour and the breakaway, and L.I.V's kind of disrupting, I think, a little bit on the golf side. So it kind of fit our model of disrupting. So that was kind of different. So it's like, hey, let's think outside the box here. The biggest win I think of it all is the Jets, and I see the Jets helmet behind you. That's probably one of our biggest wins. And that had nothing to do with aviation. It had to do creating experiences. When you look at, NFL, the, household income on a per household, is the highest in the league. New York Jets. Forget winning percentages, forget, the football.
Yeah, definitely want to forget winning percentages when it comes to that equation.
Yeah. So it became more and more like, hey, yeah, that's great. We're in aviation, and their logo is the Jets, but this fits. I mean, you're in the Mecca in New York, New Jersey, for aviation. So it in the relationship that we have with the Jets, and their front office is top in the league. So then it made sense. And then we did the activations with the Flyhouse green room. We're the first company to get inside the locker room with the players. That became a really, really good partnership. And I think that's where the difference has been, because people always think it's a pay to play, and that's part of it, right? We want to pay for some marketing, and that's great. But they're users of Flyhouse. Perfect. Check that box. And then it's like, okay, how can we actually utilize our other partners, the Jets partners, to help Flyhouse? That's the thinking outside the box, or we say thinking outside the house, that people just don't think about. It's like, oh yeah, pay us a couple $100,000, we'll put your name on a billboard. That's one way to look at it, but we like it where they're users of Flyhouse. Perfect. Now, how can we come together and create a better experience for your users and your partners? The Jets obviously have a ton of partners. Has nothing to do with football. You go in the Flyhouse green room and it's just like, oh, there's a football game today. It is 350 people inside this room. It's a high end kind of luxury suite, littered with restoration hardware type furniture, all you can eat food, high end drinks. And it's not just, if you want a hot dog hamburger, you can get it. But then if you want lobster and shrimp and oysters, you got that too. So steak. So that's the creating the experience. Then you get on the field, do all that. So, bringing our partners, our vendors, to the games just elevates the level that, typically you see in aviation is just kind of that stagnant level. Now it's like, now we're going to go a step above.
I
You're
mean, it all
building
seems
partnerships everywhere, it sounds like, right? So you're partnering with the people that you sponsor, that you work with. You're partnering with your employees, your coworkers. You're partnering with your vendors and the people that you rely on to service your end users, right? So everything kind of comes back to that, and the mentality of not just being a number or not just being another customer. You are genuinely building a bunch of partnerships here with every aspect of what you're doing, it sounds like.
Well, and I think the key word out of that is genuinely. I think that, there's money solves a lot of things. But I think you can do a lot more by being genuine. And I think that is a little, that's not part of the playbook. I think you just got to be, listen, we're just three guys having a conversation today. There's no script. And I think being able to have that come across to your partners that, hey, we're in this thing together. We're trying to build my business. I'm not a .org. I'm going to make some money. But I think the part of it that people miss is, how do we engage everybody? It's not just about Flyhouse. Flyhouse is going to win, but you can win too. We can win together if we work together. And I think that's people they just don't operate in that mindset. And I think that's a different animal.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you'd mentioned how everything the system is broken, and everyone talks about that all the time. But my take is it's not fully broken; it's just barely good enough to operate. And it seems like you've really cracked the code. And I know that people have been trying to do this for many years. I do think that the ace up your sleeve is your sports background as well, where you managed to find really fertile ground for partnerships at the highest reaches of sports here, where there is a lot of money, where there is excitement. Like, I come from the television world where it's been decimated because people don't watch TV the way they used to, and obviously everything's streaming. You're comparing, you're competing against social media, but there is one thing that people still tune into, and that's live entertainment, sporting events. It's a really big place where there's a lot of money and a lot of interest, and it's essentially cannot be disrupted by AI. One of the few places, and it just seems like you put it all together. And now here's the icing on the cake here with your sports background and your understanding, your genuine, legitimate credibility within the sports world, which I think has really kind of helped facilitate this. And clearly, it seems like you've got a lot of success underneath your belt. And I imagine you haven't stopped yet, right? Where are you going right now with this?
The sky's the limit, right? I mean, listen, we feel that, um, you know, time is not on our side because, obviously there's a lot of companies now popping up, and I think the AI plays a big component of this. Listen, I mean, the AI is great. I think, you know, um, it's the same
Well, the
conversation.
events are AI proof. How you tackle your side of the business is not. Yeah, for sure. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
you have to
But listen,
consider that.
I think we are enhancing. I mean, listen, this Sun Air acquisition, it gave us some stability. It gave us a place that we can actually fly the Flyhouse flag in Southern California and eyes in Camarillo. Gives us some more airplanes, gives us a lot more hangar space. That's the value. But then I look at the value that what it does, not just for Flyhouse, but it's like, what does it do for our partners? Now I have space for our partners. I've got one operator that's got, 30 airplanes, and they're like, "Hey, how can we work together on the maintenance? And, I need space in Van Nuys, and where can I put my parts for my airplanes?" It's like, yeah, let's figure out a way to work together, as opposed to kind of doing these little like mom and pops all over the country. It's like, hey, let's really create and collaborate, and innovate, right? Um, and instead of alienate. And I think that's the message. But listen, nothing's easy. But to your point, that sports background to be able to say, hey, no, we're not giving up. We're going to be, we've got some headwinds, no doubt. But grinding, getting the right people, getting that huddle and say, hey guys, today's just going to be a bad day. Let's hang in there. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And then having the belief that you have the right team. People always say, and it's kind of cliche. It's like you go to war, who you calling? We've got a solid group, and so I think when you look around and at the team that we've got, I mean, listen, Al Mann is as solid as they come on the safety side, but he's a one man band. Well, now he's got a team behind him, and there's other parts of the company that as you kind of stroll around and look at, it's like, okay, we've we've got that box checked. Let's go to this. We're looking for a global marketing officer now, and I think the good thing about by having some of this press is now you have some people coming to you going, hey, how do I be a part of your team? So we're not actually having to go out and actually have to find these people. Now they're finding us, and that's it's not like, hey, you feel like you made it, but it's like, man, we really got something. People are now wanting to come work for us. That means a lot. Um, and then you have people that are telling their friends, pilots are like, "Hey, I got this buddy," and so I think there's just it checks that box that, hey, we've got something.
You've built this incredible organization, all of these people on your team, and you've done this a couple different times, but at the root of it, it sounds like a lot of what makes you tick is doing things the right way with the right people. And I think a big part of that comes down to, mentorship and actually giving back to the community and giving back to aviation, the world as a whole. I want to talk about that a little bit and ask you just a few questions on, things that make it a little bit more of a uh, fun, happy place here with Jack Lambert, right? So we've done all the business. Let's bring it back to the human side. Um, where have you started, or what mentors have you had that have put you in the position that you're in, and how are you giving that back now? Do you have anybody that you're currently mentoring, or would like to?
I grew up in a small town, graduated with 9 people, uh, didn't have a lot of opportunities. I had to create them. But I had to have the opportunity to show them. And so I think, when I look back at my career, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for several people, and those people kind of embraced me and gave me some opportunities. And but kind of showed me the way to say, hey, it's not always going to be easy. I 2 days before my first game, I shattered my hand. I could have given up. I wanted to give up. But being able to kind of push through that. And then obviously being in the Hall of Fame for 3 sports, I never saw that coming. I literally was going to give up. Was literally going to walk away, move back home. So I'm just a small guy from Georgia, but those opportunities, and it's what you do with them that, creates other opportunities and creates other opportunities for other people. That mentorship of, I tell the example when I speak of, I had a guy who said, hey, I wanted Wall Street Journal on the airplane. I got him New York Times, and I never called him, and he made me pay for it for 2 years. And he said, Jack, all you had to do is call me. You told me you could do something. If you couldn't do it, you should have just called me and told me you couldn't do it. And it was the same conversation my dad had with me, and I didn't learn it when I was a kid. If you're going to be late past 10, just call. And I would never call. It was 10:05. I'm like, well,
You're not
I'll
alone on
see when
that
I
one.
get home. But I had to learn it as a professional, you know? started a business, had a kid, bought a house, bought a car, all in the same month. And then I got a $60,000 bill staring at me that this guy didn't pay for 2 years because all I didn't call and tell him. And he says, "Hey, it's all good. Just call and tell me." So learning some of those hard lessons, you know, prepares you for what's next. College ain't going to prepare you. That's just that's just the X's and O's. But the real life and sports. But then further that to, yes, we giving opportunities to folks. I had a lady call yesterday, known her for 30 years. She's got a son. I'm like, absolutely. We'll bring him on. We'll show him the ropes. So being able to have those, being able to give those opportunities, give back. I'm on the board at my university. I was just with the chancellor and the athletic director. How can Flyhouse help? Going to the College of Management and saying, "Hey, how do we give internships for people in marketing and management and create opportunities that I didn't have those opportunities." And so now it's like, okay, how do we do things not just for my university, but for other universities? Obviously, we got a lot of folks with Embry-Riddle backgrounds, and it's like, how do you add them into the fold, and then how do you go outside of aviation? People, I didn't know anything about private aviation. And so now it's kind of like, oh, we're kind of like the cool hip person in town. It's like, hey, you want to be a part of Flyhouse? They see the swag and they see the stuff on the game day, and it's like, hey, now they want to be a part of it. And so being able to give those opportunities and give back is very important to me.
It's awesome. You mentioned you guys have a Flyhouse Foundation. What's that all about? What's your goal with that? Where do you give back, and how can people find that and contribute?
Yeah, so I think we set it up last year, and I don't have anybody running it. Full disclosure, but it's something that we want to set up for our owners. We do the stuff for the Angel Flight and the various networks out there. Um, but being able to the job fairs, being able to create opportunities, especially like with College Game Day. I'll give you an example. Um, we go to every, the College Game Day every Saturday, but we're on site on Thursday, with the, sororities and the students of those schools. And so, we've always been thinking about how can we create opportunities to where we say, hey, we want to give back to the universities to, fly them home for Thanksgiving. You think about the military, going to these military air shows, and how do we give back to, veterans? We do a lot of, I probably play in 15 to 20 golf tournaments a year, and it's all charity. Whether it's Boys and Girls Club or whether we're sponsoring a hole or whatever it is, but being able to do that at the either the university level, through our partnerships, or just going and creating those partnerships ourselves with local charities, is important to us. But utilizing the Flyhouse Foundation to kind of help support that.
Excellent. Love that. And especially if you can tie something fun into it, like some golf. I know Rob's heard me talk about this many, many times with many guests, but and I had an opportunity to play in the Friends of Aviation tournament back in Vegas. Um, Obviously golf and aviation go hand in hand.
They do indeed. Yeah. It's the
Yeah,
universal language.
you got plenty of that to go around, so why not tie something charitable to it? And I love how this industry's embraced that, and you're obviously doing a good job with that as well. So, um, let me think about one other thing here real quick, and then I know we're coming up on time, so we probably want to hit a couple of the lightning round things, as Rob calls it. But um, real quick for you, if you had some advice to give young professionals, or just anybody trying to break into business aviation. I mean, I got into the industry in my late 20s, so it's not always people just graduating school or maybe someone looking for a mid-career pivot, but what's something you would give somebody new to this industry that you might have learned as you figured it out along the way?
Well, I'd say keep your mouth closed and your eyes open, right? I think everything's a learning experience, and I think there's, somebody said the other day, what can I do here? And I was like, well, there's fires everywhere. Now, I know you didn't go to fire school, but you can put out fires every single day. So there's always opportunities to expand the knowledge base in aviation, whether you're a line guy, you don't have to be a pilot, literally has nothing to do with flying. There's just all the other integral parts of aviation that, you know, obviously just to make a flight go, there's a lot of parts of that. I mean, catering plays a pivotal role in a trip. um, you don't have to be in aviation to be in catering. So, I think it's, um, y- you know, aviation's a sexy business. I, you love talking about it. Oh, private aviation, jets, and it's cool. Um, but it's hard every single day. I mean, you have an airplane, you have 6 trips tied together, and the second leg breaks, on the plane breaks, and it's like all hell goes, I mean, it just goes to shit. Uh, you gotta have some perseverance to fight through that. You're gonna have more good days than bad, but it's tough, and you gotta prepare yourself for that and understand that. It's not always sexy. Um we talk about it and we laugh but man, behind the scenes, it's hard. Um, but I think the advice is, listen, you got to they say in football, keep your head on a swivel. You're on a ramp, got to keep your head on a swivel. Everything can come at you at once. Um, and I don't know that you can ever prepare yourself for that because there's so much stuff being thrown at you. But having an open mind, and listen, I mean, there's opportunities for everybody here. Um, I think that's the biggest play. You talk about playbook, keeping an open mind, and just being able to pivot on a dime.
Well, then, thank you.
And on that note, maybe not even on that note, but I'm gonna do another pivot over here as well. So Flyhouse, clearly track record of success here. It's fantastic. You've been enjoying the ride. I'm sure, as you mentioned, there's headwinds along the way. But what's next? Where are you going to be in the next 5 years? What kind of direction or goals are you looking to achieve? In the future for the future of Flyhouse.
Well, you say 5 years. I'm saying the next 90. The last 90 is different from the next 90. So we do it in 90 days. Our next step is we're going to go outside the U.S. We're going to Europe. We're going to Brazil. Ironically, I didn't know this, but Brazil and Germany and obviously Dubai are some of the fastest growing aviation meccas. I just had a call last week with the people from Rwanda, of all places, that the Economic Council wants Flyhouse to be in Rwanda.
I did not have that on my bingo card. All
I
right.
I, I didn't have that on mine either. I think, but again, to your point, the next 90 days, it's like, okay, um, so I think we're starting that process to go to Europe. But we got to, there's a lot of things we can solve here. I think some acquisitions, and for us is expanding TAM. But as I told you earlier, it's behavior. We've got to get people out there getting the message out and delivering on that message. Um, and I think that's the biggest. And listen, the sky is the limit, really. When you think about kind of what we're doing, it takes a village of people to get you there. And so I think creating that village is what we're trying to do.
Well, look, the way the glacial pace that BizAv typically works at, I expect it's usually a 5 to 10 year plan, not a 90-day plan. So that speaks volumes that you're hitting critical mass right now, and you're definitely one of the ones to watch.
Well, and I think that's the difference maker. I mean, you got to be able to take that leap. Um, there's an old saying that if you want something done, just go do it.
Hmm.
Um, do it yourself. And so I think sitting around waiting, I don't think we have time. I said, hey, yeah, when I took this gig, it was like I got 5 years left in me. I mean, I ran pretty hard at the Jet Access days. but I said, hey, I got 5 years to really run hard. And so that's yeah, it's nonstop right now.
That's terrific. All right, Jack, we're coming up on time right now. Could you share with the audience how they can find you or find Flyhouse online?
Well, you can Google, obviously download the app. We're on the Apple and Android store. We always say download, scan, and book your flight. We're standing by.
Wonderful, wonderful. Jack, thank you so much for taking the time to share your journey, the Flyhouse story, and the lessons you've learned, building something that's truly different in business aviation. I really appreciate having you on the show.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate you, boys.
And a reminder for all the listeners at home to follow us on LinkedIn, like, subscribe, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Review or feedback is greatly appreciated. It helps us spread the word. It really makes a difference to help support the show. We will see you all next week with a new episode of The Crosscheck.